Welcome to the podcast Killer Content with Emma and Anne, the weekly rundown for true crime fans who can't get enough of all things crim. From the biggest crime stories making headlines to the latest must-watch documentaries and chilling murder mysteries, we've got you covered. Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Content. I'm Emma and this is Anne. Today we're going to be talking about the mean streets of Sydney. There's been a lot of gun crime in the past week, including the Inner West shooting, which got a lot of people talking online about it. Also going to talk about the Gisèle Pelicot case in France that was back in court this week, and also the Madeline McCann case as well. That had a new court case this week as well.
And on TV and podcasts, etc., we're going to do a show called Her Last Broadcast, the Abduction of Jodi Huisentruit, about a newsreader that went missing. A new podcast, or not a new podcast, a podcast with some latest updates called Fairy Meadow, which is very good, and Monster, the Gein story. And Emma has a surprise one I think she's going to throw in, which I refuse to watch.
Yeah, some B-grade schlock, but I think I'm doing a community service by sharing, talking about it. First of all, how's your week been, Anne?
I had a pretty good week. It's been a bit eventful. I went away last weekend with my family, my extended family, to the Megalong Valley, and I started a new job this week. Other than that, I had book club last night. How about you?
Well, I was in Canberra for a conference, so that was interesting and good. That was up at Parliament House, but I got my hair cut today, if anyone can notice.
Lovely. You look great.
I hate getting my hair cut. I find it really boring, and I get it done about once every 6 months. It just drives me absolutely insane. But I've also realised there's this specific cut that hairdressers now give middle-aged women. It's like the light blonde, which I have, and the little bob, which I now have. And I get it every time. Anyway, so maybe I need to chat GPT a new hairstyle. But anyway, let's get on with it. Well, let's kick off with the Gisèle Pelicot case, which gripped people made international headlines at the end of last year. But when there was that rape case where 50 men were basically charged with raping her because her husband, Dominic Pelicot, drugged her and would invite men to come and rape her, and he'd film it. But anyway, so out of the 50 men that were convicted for that crime, one this week decided to appeal the conviction, and basically he fucked around and found out. So he ended up, it was 4 days the trial. The conviction was maintained because it went before a jury, and he went from serving 9 years for rape. Now he's got 10 years. So there's been quite a bit of glee and applause from a lot of women internationally on that one. What was interesting about the reason why he decided to appeal it was he didn't see himself as a rapist. He said, he basically said that he thought it was a game that Dominique and Gisèle were playing. And he said, when I got in there, I thought she was quite drugged and she wasn't sort of moving. But I didn't think that I was raping her. I thought it was sort of a game. Now, apparently he was there for 3 hours and raped her multiple times.
Oh, goodness me.
Dominic Pelicot, who in this appeal and in the previous trial basically said absolutely they knew she was drugged. He gave explicit instructions before people turned up that they were to wear aftershave, their hands were not to be cold, etc., so they wouldn't wake her up. So he said they knew that. So I find that very interesting, as some commenters on my site said, men don't see themselves as rapists when they are.
Yep.
So what did you think of the case?
Yeah, look, I followed it originally, and I did watch a bit of news on it, and I think the 60 Minutes team in Australia did a story on it, and I've thought it was a bit sad recently when it became clear that the daughter and the mother had a falling out. The daughter now claims possibly has seen some photos of herself where she's confused as to how she got in that position, that state, and she's suggesting possibly she was a victim as well. I think you were saying, Emma, that the mother doesn't necessarily agree with that, and somehow they've had a falling out, whereas the daughter had been a very strong advocate of her mother for a long time. I thought that was a sad new fact that it came out. But I think this is one of the most extraordinary rape cases I've ever read about, and I think it's interesting that she's not pursuing the daughter's claims and apparently a couple of other claims. Is that right?
The daughter-in-laws are now claiming that maybe Dominic groomed the grandchildren as well. In relation to the daughter, there was just a couple of, for people that don't know the case, and that would be like 0 out of 5, everyone seemed to know about it, was how Gisèle thought she was a happily married woman. So how it found out was that Dominic got caught upskirting a girl in the supermarket. An upskirt is a camera under a dress. Police take the computer, they open it up, and they find all these videos because he had filmed all these sexual encounters or rapes that had occurred to Gisèle. So they bring Gisèle in, and even before she was shown the video, she was saying, yes, he's a fine man, he's my husband. Then she gets, her whole world gets shattered, I think, in the space of, 1 hour. But there was also two photographs of the daughter. And the daughter was saying in a weird position, like looking like she'd been drugged, in underwear, but in underwear that she just did not recognise. But there's no other evidence, and I don't know why Gisèle doesn't believe, like, this man is a monster.
Yes, I mean, I suppose she's been doing this incredible thing. She insisted, for those that don't know, that it all be done in front of an open court so that everyone could see it, that other women or men, I suppose, who have been drugged and then raped, that she was working on their behalf in many ways to expose this terrible practice. And I imagine it is not this kind of system of rape like the husband undertook, but certainly using drugs to put people out and then sexually assault them is not uncommon. So she was trying to bring that attention to that. I did wonder whether taking on her daughter's case and the daughters-in-law and other people was just maybe a step too far given what she's done. And maybe once this is all done and dusted and this appeal is over, she might put some attention to it.
There's 2 points that I just want to make. One is I think it was great that she made it public, and it's a good point because she's managed to shame all those 50 men because all their names came out. So they're from a small village, so everyone knows what type of men they are. And it did coin that term of not all men, when in fact it does seem all men. And we were talking before we started the podcast, Anne, about the fact men did turn up and look at her and go, oh my God, no way, I'm not having sex with that woman. But they left.
Yeah, they didn't report it. It's extraordinary, isn't it? There's I think there's either been a documentary made or one being made. I tried to have a look at it before today. It's not in Australia yet, but where they basically call it sort of the shaming of a town, like literally shamed the town because so many of the men from that smallish town were involved with this crime. Incredible.
Yeah, and it's like, I think they thought that if they were getting consent from the husband, that consented. That was consent to have sex with the wife. Now, the next case is this, I suppose, the Inner West shooting. For those who aren't in Sydney, last Sunday night, there was a man, his name is Artemis Mintasis, had a gun. He was up in his apartment in Croydon Park and he shot 50 bullets. He extraordinarily only hit one person directly who is in hospital recovering. He was arrested by police. Police did a great job both in protecting other people from being shot and also like taking the man alive, which obviously he obviously had a high caliber rifle with lots of bullets. Now, one of the things that Artemis has been into court and he's obviously not getting bail and he's in custody at the moment, and he's been charged with 18 counts of attempted murder and firearm offences as well because he wasn't a registered firearm owner, and obviously where did he get the guns? But I want to ask one question. I want to question, and I know that you've got a lot to say in this case as well, is should the guy buy a lottery ticket? The fact that he set off 50 rounds of bullets and he has not one death on his hand, which is...
I think everyone in that street should buy a lottery ticket as well. I mean, this could be a very different story if he'd been a better shot, to be honest with you. Well, it's a busy street. I think it's a shopping strip. There were people everywhere. And yes, it could have been one of those mass shooting tragedies. It's incredible. You're absolutely right. Bad shot. Maybe he didn't really want to hurt people. Don't know.
Well, we're talking about this. I think this guy's a masterclass. And at first, when I heard about the court case and none of his family turned up, I was like, oh, that's a bit sad. But I also realised they seem to be doing a lot in the background. He turns up, he's got a barrister there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's straight out of the blocks, which anyone knows is a very smart thing to do, particularly if you're facing very serious criminal charges. So they're not fucking around in defending him. Today, a couple of days ago in the paper, they had a friend of the family. I don't know if they've hired a PR firm, and if they have, that's, my God, kudos to you. But they're saying that there had been a police welfare check back in September, that people had been worried about his mental health. And also they say it's not related to a marriage breakdown, which was in early reports. He's apparently, his marriage ended 10 years ago, and he, very close family, still gets on, apparently still got on with the ex-wife. So there's no friction there. But they're saying that he was quite distressed because of his housing situation. He'd lost a rental a few months before because the owners had wanted to sell it, and he couldn't find appropriate rental, and he was upstairs on this Croydon park and apparently had difficulty getting upstairs, and so sometimes they were saying they had to sleep in a chair downstairs.
Yeah, very sad. Yes, it'll be interesting to see. I think this will be an interesting court case. We'll get to hear a lot more about his background and how he got where he was.
But do you think the police are going to be interested where he got the firearms from?
Well, you have to think so. He's not registered. In theory, he can't wander into a gun shop and buy one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder. Well, he did have a firearm license, but it expired decades ago. So I don't know whether those firearms are from that time when he had the license, or if he procured them from elsewhere. I think that'll be the thing that'll interest the police very much. Now, there was a couple of things that did amuse me, and I shouldn't say that because it was a serious crime, is that Australians are not used to gun crime, basically. So there's these I'm finding mildly amusing reports. Like, so the Croydon Park kebab shop's next door to the apartment, right? The gun's going off. There's gun bullets. They hear it. People are just like, oh, that's fireworks or something. They continue eating their kebabs, and then suddenly they're smelling the gun bullets, and they do realise what's going on, and they shut the doors and keep people safe. And again, a taxi driver that drove up to McDonald's was like, oh, that must be just firecrackers, grand fireman all night, and then looks around and there's bloody bullets in his cab.
Yeah, he got shot at, didn't he? He actually got bullets in his cab, yeah.
So it's just like,
well,
whereas in America they'd all be ducking for cover
exactly.
at the first sign of a thing.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I live in Tempe, and oh my God, the number. You would have it here too. The fireworks are let off all the time, and one of the running jokes on our local Facebook page is that gunfire or fireworks? It's like a running. So maybe Croydon Park has the same running joke. Having
said that, there's other guns that have been going off, or crime, people with guns in crime in Sydney, and it's. The first one is Revesby. I don't normally talk about gangland crime, neither on here or on my TikTok, just to be honest, doesn't really interest me. But this week in Revesby, the police foiled a hit on a man who was picking up his kid from childcare, and they went in. They realised that they must have been following these guys. They arrested them, and the reason I'm interested in is twofold. One, the gang that ordered the hit is potentially related to the T-Tran case. Now, for those who don't know what happened with T-Tran, she was the woman, I think, in Bankstown or around that area, Padstow, that got kidnapped from a house, stripped naked, taken, I think, to Beverly Hills, where she was found, executed, and then the car burned. And it kind of shocked Sydney that something so hideous could happen. What they found out was her boyfriend or partner or husband, I can't remember what, the father of her kids, he was involved in cooking meth for that gang, and apparently he might have ripped them off. He was in Queensland at the time. They have arrested one person in relation to that case in August. But they're saying that same crime gang ordered this hit on this guy, because I think he was also he was in the gang, but obviously there's been some breakdown in the relationship. I don't know why, that won't come out. But the other reason I'm interested in it is that these days, apparently, organised crime can procure people via an app, like an Airtasker app, where you can order a hit on someone, or you can order illegal firearms. Obviously, it's not something you can get from the Apple App Store, it's from the dark web.
We've looked.
But this keeps on popping up in all these stories over the past few years, and it's interesting. The people, obviously, who got arrested in this weren't Vietnamese, because the hit was ordered by a Vietnamese crime gang. They're like just
was it allegedly ordered by a Vietnamese crime gang?
Allegedly, whatever.
It was allegedly ordered by a Vietnamese crime gang, and they were allegedly white.
Well, I don't know if they were white, but yeah, they were allegedly not. They weren't Vietnamese. Their names didn't suggest they were Vietnamese. They were just like young dumb sort of crims who were wanting to make a buck. But
on the app.
Yeah. So it's extraordinary. I mean, I wouldn't mind finding where this app's from, but it's interesting. And the cops are saying, and it's not amusing. They're saying, like, the old timers are like, well, when it was just the gangs doing it, it was much cleaner, sort of professional kill or whatever they were doing. Whereas these outsourcing sort of more amateur guys are a bit more like laissez-faire about what they're doing and who they hit.
It's like Airtasker. You can get a good painter or you can get a bad painter. It just depends on your luck.
Do you reckon they review them? You get 5 stars if you get a good
5-star shooting. Well, there was another shooting also this week, and again, don't always follow them, but what struck me was that my son, I hate to say, doesn't mind the occasional UFC fight, not in one, watching them. And this fellow, Suman Mokhtarian, who was just 33, was found with gunshot wounds and died on the scene in Riverston. And what struck me with this was some of the footage, again, because these days everything is captured on CCTV. It was sort of 6 o'clock in a nice balmy evening this week where it was still light. And this guy was literally just taking a walk, quite a well-known fellow, wasn't his street, just taking a walk. And he was gunned down in this suburban street, looked like a very nice street, and you could see images of parents scooping up their children who were like playing basketball or pottering in the front garden and taking them inside. And they interviewed one fellow who said, my God, my wife just literally walked in the door with our lovely dog, and this fellow was shot a few metres away. So it was quite an interesting one because it was very much a suburban street, never had this sort of thing happen before. And this man, and they interviewed a couple of people because he ran a gym, as they often do, the ex-UFC fighters, where little kids come, and all the parents of the little kids going, oh, you're so lovely to my children. Yet obviously there's something, I won't go in, they're talking about various reasons. He actually has survived, I think, previous attacks, but I won't go into all of it because, as we said, we don't really go into this gangland stuff. But I just thought it was interesting, one, where he was shot amongst so many people, and again, very lucky, and 2, that he'd once been a UFC fighter.
So the next thing we're moving on to is the Madeline McCann case. Now, as most of you would know, Madeline McCann was the girl who was abducted in Portugal when she was 3 years old while her parents were having dinner at this resort. There's been a lot of publicity over it, I think, but God, it's probably 3 decades now. And they haven't had that many strong leads. They do think that they found Christian Bruckner is the guy that they think is the most likely suspect. But again, they've tried digging. There's no evidence to directly link him. He's an absolute acute or a compulsive sexual offender. And he was in Portugal at the time. They were trying. He basically has just gotten out of jail for a sex offence, a child sex offence again. And the German authorities were keen to keep him in there because they think he'll reoffend, but they couldn't find anything to link him to the Madeline McCann case. But anyway, that's not what happened in the courts this week for Madeline McCann. What's happened this week is that there's been a girl who's been charged with stalking the McCann family, and she's claiming that she's a Polish lady, 24, claiming that she is their daughter, the long-lost Madeline McCann. They're saying, no, she's not. And what I found interesting about it is that the McCanns have refused to take a DNA test.
Yes, but I was doing a little bit of research into this because one does wonder if you wanted to rule out, the woman being your daughter. But one of the things that prosecutors said, I suspect the McCanns are just really at the end of their tether, the poor people. So the prosecutor said that the reason why they haven't is there's unequivocal scientific evidence that Miss Wandelt, who has claimed to have memories of Madeline's childhood or disappearance, has no familial link with McCann's. she's been known to police this woman, I think, for other sort of slightly strange assertions. So she's clearly. So I think the McCanns have said we don't need to go through this tortuous process. She's definitely not our daughter, and prosecutors have backed that in.
Well, the interesting thing that I thought the mum McCann said, and I can't remember her name, she said, I would know if it was my daughter. Now, I thought that was, I don't know.
Well, apparently this woman has
30
claimed,
years?
she's claimed to be 2 other missing children too. So I suspect it's probably less about that and more about, I don't know. I suspect that, I can't even imagine the torture that those parents have been through. Firstly, they were accused originally of...
People still think that they were the ones that did it.
Yeah.
Whenever I do a McCann thing on TikTok, there's the people that come in with that theory.
Yes,
that
and
they're
I
the
suspect
killers.
this is the last. This woman stalked them at their house, and in fact, in the dark, gave the mother a very big shock and called her mum or mother. I mean, she sounds a little bit...
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, but as a mother myself, I would want to be 100% sure that it wasn't my child, because I had a look at the photo. Like, people change over, well, it must be 20 years if it aligns with age, actually, not 30 years. I probably got that wrong. If she's 24, so it must have happened 21 years ago then. But there is a tiny resemblance, blonde hair, similar sort of face shaped. I don't know. I know that I'd go, yeah, I'm happy to take a DNA test just to...
I suspect there's things we don't know, that the police know, that this woman is, for some reason, if she's pretended to be 2 other missing children, it's probably a dead giveaway. She's not. But no, you're right. I mean, maybe we would. I don't know. As we've discussed before, these kinds of tragedies must do terrible things to your relationships and your mental health and all those sort of things. So maybe it's just a final straw.
It's getting closure, and we're going to be talking about that podcast later.
Yes.
That the lack of closure, I think, would be the one that I think they'd be hoping for a body to turn up at this stage.
I suspect they don't think she's alive, to be honest with you, but therefore she couldn't be the daughter. Anyway, we'll never know.
Yeah, I think, that's right. Shall we move on to TV?
Yeah, sure. So the first one was on Disney Plus. Was it Disney Plus? Her last broadcast, The Abduction of Jodi Huisentruit.
Yes, a documentary.
Yes, a documentary. And it is set in the 80s. It's a very old, cold case, which we enjoy, don't we? And she was quite a kind of glamorous young newsreader from, a smallish part of a state in America, and she slept through her alarm, and the producer on the show rang her on the landline. Again, I find it fascinating when you watch these ones from the 80s, how slow everything moves, because it relies on landlines and driving to the location. Anyway, she slept through. Her producer called her. She was very popular. Her producer called her and said, you've slept in? Oh, yes, no problem. I'll be up, have a shower. I'll be there in, 10 minutes. She didn't live very far away. Gets up, and they know she left the apartment because... although she was never seen again, by her car where she attempted to get in was her key that was bent, and the hairdryer that she took with her, and her makeup all scattered across the car park. And about an hour later, when she hadn't turned up, they tried again and then alerted authorities. And this documentary follows the numerous attempts and false leads to find this woman's killer. What did you think?
Look, I thought it was interesting. I'd never heard of this case. And it's, what every woman's nightmare is, going to your car and being, going to a car park and being abducted. There's a couple of things that I found interesting about it was it some of these documentaries are very formulaic, where they, pop up the suspects sort of one at a time and then discount them, which, they did drag that out over 3 episodes. But the other thing that frustrated me about it is they showed her as being quite two-dimensional. Now, there was a couple of things that I found quite interesting and that I wanted more information about. Was one, before she was abducted, she was seeing a man that looked much older. He was one of the main suspects, John Vanis, and there was video evidence where she looked like she was very much not in love, but she was obviously liked him in a, they were having a sexual relationship, I would have thought, but they didn't really talk about, I don't know, how they met or how, like,
that's true.
you would think that, you know, women like to talk about who they're seeing to their girlfriends, and I didn't get any flavour about what that relationship was, whether she did feel controlled by him. They were saying, well, he killed, you know, he might have killed her because she wanted to leave him, but there was nothing that leading up to that night that would suggest that they were going to break up, or if that she was going to break up with him that night. But no, but she did go home and try and ring someone, so maybe she had just, you know, broken up with him. The other thing was, the other suspect was that this woman that said she was a friend of hers, and the husband's name was Brad, or the ex-husband name's Brad, and Brad and the newsreader, I've forgotten her name, Jodi went out one night for dinner, and that was it. That's all they said about it. They didn't say whether they'd had a, you know, horizontal folk dance, why they went out for dinner. It's just like they went out for dinner and that was it. You know, what had brought, and I was like, well, that's a bit strange that that she would go out to dinner with Brad when her friend had separated from him.
It was a bit strange. And there was also the police officer pursuing this case seemed somewhat obsessed too. Did you notice that? He was almost like, you know, anyway, look.
I think he liked being on camera.
I think he did. He was quite buff. But he aged quite badly during the show, because it went for 3 episodes, but it did film over a number of years, didn't it? Anyway, I thought it was interesting. I enjoy watching ones that are set back sort of 70s, 80s, because you do see a different style of policing. You see the limitations that there were in terms of CCTV and tracking phones and all those sort of things. Even there was an identikit process, and they used kind of, you know, very old-fashioned way of doing it. But I think that's always interesting, because these days we expect things to happen very quickly, and actually that kind of, we could almost move on from that to the podcast. But anyway, that moves me on to the Fairy Meadow podcast. Now, it's not brand new, the Fairy Meadow podcast, and I think a friend of yours put us onto it.
Yeah, work colleague Amelia. Yeah. Shout out to Amelia.
Yeah, and but why it's sort of still it's still current is there was some recent updates as much as this year, and a new episode was added to this podcast. I actually got to listen to the whole thing in my commute this week. So for those that don't know, in 1970, I think it was, a young girl called Cheryl Grimmer, 3-year-old, was at the beach. She was the daughter of some 10-pound poms, and apparently in Fairy Meadow there was a migrant camp where the 10-pound poms and lots of other migrants went before they were resettled, and it was right next to the beach. And so all those migrant families would go down this day. For those that are familiar with sort of New South Wales weather, this southerly buster hit and it kind of sent everyone running and in different directions and packing everything up. At that point, a young boy and his young sister and I think a couple of other siblings went up to the toilet block, the shower block. The young girl, the 3-year-old, went into the girls' shower block. The 7-year-old brother wouldn't go in to get her because he'd been told never to go into the ladies' shower block. After she refused to come out, and we've all, you know, those of you who've raised 3-year-olds, refused to come out, he wouldn't go in. So he took the very short walk back to the beach to tell his mother that Cheryl wouldn't come out, and could she come and go into the ladies' change room and get her for him. And in those split seconds, and I get tingles even talking about it, she was snatched and disappeared. And that poor 7-year-old, you know, lost his sister. Massive search ensued. What this documentary does is, or podcast does, is sort of run you through the various investigations that have been going pretty much since 1970 till 2024. It's never been solved. And the podcast does a very good job of exposing the trauma that this disappearance left with the family, particularly the son Ricky, but also the trauma, I think, for many that were at the beach on that day, her family back in England, and actually a couple of the police officers who came later to the case and were quite disappointed in how the early case was managed. I thought it was BBC podcast. I listened to it on Spotify. What did you think of it?
I think the tragedy of the case, as you said, is the poor brother
Yes.
who has lived with this for 50 years, and how it's impacted his life. I mean, obviously it's impacted everyone's life, but that you can, as he talks, that feeling of guilt. Now, have you ever lost your kids anywhere?
I don't think I have. My mother talks about losing my sister at a fun fair and the terror for that few seconds when we couldn't find my sister Jane.
Yeah, I have. I lost Darius at LAX airport, Los Angeles airport, after we got off a long flight. We went to the toilet. I think he's about 2 or 3. I think I changed, it must have been 2 because I changed his nappy. And he's never was a runner. And I plopped him down and I turned to wash my hands, and then I looked down and he was gone. Left the toilet area, toilets. I ran out and I just started screaming. I was screamed and screamed and screamed, and it was, I don't know, I think he was probably gone 5 minutes, and then this child comes fucking running back down. Yeah, my mind was going wild. I thought he was kidnapped.
For those that may not watch it or listen to it, but the brother Ricky went on to have quite a very difficult life, including the relationship with his parents. I don't think they forgave him, or certainly his father made it known to Ricky that he felt he was somehow to blame. And he, to this day, and he was only interviewed again for the last episode recently, he constantly says, I should never have left her. I should never have left her. I should have gone and got her. And this goes through his brain all the time. And his current wife, he's been married 2 or 3 times, says he wakes up in the night. So the trauma for that 7-year-old, and he remembers it. He says he remembers the day, that he can repeat every detail of it. Anyway, there were a number of suspects. Of course, in the 70s in Australia, some poor migrant from Greece or Italy was
Macedonia. There's a lot of Macedonians down in Wollongong in those days.
Was pinged for it, in fact, I won't ruin it for you. But in fact, that was unlikely to be correct. So, but a lot of the evidence and the witnesses were not properly recorded, and they weren't properly tracked down, and so there is a suspect in the case. He can't be named still to this day because he was a minor at the time of this disappearance. And it's I think I really enjoyed it. I think Emma thought it went a bit long, but I really enjoyed it, and I think the BBC do a very good job.
I enjoyed it. I think it was drawn. It was where I'm still going on. I think I'm up to episode 6 or episode 7, and I did Google this morning. Now, as you said, the main suspect can't be named, but apparently there's a New South Wales MP who's threatening to name under parliamentary privilege this person. So, and I don't know how I feel about that, but I think what it comes down to, I think there was a bit of a botched police investigation at the beginning, that they took, there was one significant piece of evidence that they really didn't take as seriously as they should have.
Yeah, no, it's a very sad story, and it does link back to the Madeline McCann story and the other things we've talked about here, where these unsolved crimes and the trauma it causes on those families. Now on to something a bit lighter, Monster, the Gein story. As you said, there's a series of these monsters and then different criminals attached to them. It has been given some pretty panning sort of reviews in the paper. I started to watch it. I don't know why. Enjoying is the wrong word because it's so gory. What I didn't realise until I went back after I started to watch it and did a bit of research into it was that this fellow, Ed, is actually the kind of the inspiration for a number of really quite nasty horror films. So Psycho is one of them, The Silence of the Lambs, there's another one or two as well. And actually in this show, they have scenes with Alfred Hitchcock in it, and Anthony Perkins is, there's an actor playing Anthony Perkins in this. They weave in the launch of Psycho at the theatres, where people apparently are sick and run screaming, and pregnant women give birth to their babies and whatever while they're seeing it. And it goes back and forward between the family story of Ed and this. Now, I'm only 3 episodes in. I think I will keep watching it. I think you either kind of like horror type film or shows or you don't. This is a horror series. crime and horror.
And this is one of the monsters, the Netflix monster series there. Ryan Murphy's the producer, so they did the Jeffrey Dahmer series, and also the Menendez brothers Dramification that actually brought back that whole crime back in the spotlight, and there's been calls, as we've spoken about in other podcasts, to have them released. I was going to watch it, then I had a really busy week. Then two media organisations, both of whom I quite respect, both gave it a 1-star review, and I'm like, I just don't know if I can go there. Is it a 1-star?
I don't think it's a 1. Is it 1 out of 5, you say?
1 out of 5, panned, absolutely excoriated.
Oh, no, I'm thinking it's 2.5 at this stage, but I haven't finished it. Let me finish it. Maybe I'll give you a report back in next week and tell you. But I think I loved horror films as a young person. I can't watch them now, but I loved them. I went and saw all of them. I saw Amityville Horror, I saw Psycho, I saw all Alfred Hitchcock's films. I loved them. I don't know what it is about being young and not liking that kind of film. I have stopped liking them, but this has kind of probably taken me back to a time when that sort of thing, and it does feel like that. It's filmed in this dark and, it's really gross actually. But anyway, I'm going to keep watching it. I'll let you know.
It's been very popular. Now, one of the shows that I want to talk about, which is not getting much, not nearly as much chatter as I think it should, is a show on Stan called 9 Dead Bodies in a Mexican Morgue. Now, this is complete and utter B-grade schlock.
Yes, it is.
But it hit the spot for me. The plot lines, basically the plot line is a plane goes down in a Mexican jungle, and there's, I think, 10 survivors. And each survivor, every day, one of the survivors is killed or murdered. So they work out that there's a murderer amongst them, and they're trying to work out who it is. Okay, so as I said, complete and utter schlock. Eric McCormack, who used to be Will in Will and Grace, is one of the leads, as is a woman called Siobhan from the Derry Girls, who reminds me of Maggie Sloan from A Country Practice. She has that same sort of look. But if you want something light-ish, I mean, there's a bit of blood and gore, but just something that's just so friggin' ridiculous, it's going to be, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But it's on Stan, 9 Dead Bodies.
And what would you give it out of 5?
Oh, I'd give it a 3. It really hit the spot for me last weekend, I've got to say. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it.
I have to say I watched the first episode on your recommendation. I can't look at Siobhan as a middle-aged housewife. It just really threw me off. I kept thinking she's going to break into some joke any second. I first episode decided that I didn't need to watch anymore. But, you have maybe changed my mind. So maybe we can report back on that one too.
Okay, that's it for this week.
Yeah.
And just again, if you like the podcast, please, give us 5 stars and share it with your friends if they like it, and follow us on the socials as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Bye.